Hello. Welcome back to Hustle and Heart, where strategy meets bold ambition. And we have the pleasure of talking with some amazing people across the country and oftentimes across the world. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Monte Anderson. Monte, for those who have not had a chance to get to know your work, would you share with us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, good to be here, Edie. Thank you for having me. Well, I am a real estate developer that's community focused in southern Dallas County in Texas. So I spent 40 years now working in the same communities that I grew up in. I spend all my time doing my development, my real estate work in this area and doing all kinds of different things, old shopping centers, downtown buildings, theaters, churches. I mean, you name it, golf course even, so a little bit of residential development and all kinds of mixed use, hotel, theater. And so I spend my time doing that, and then half of my time, and then the other half of my time I spend with a company called Neighborhood Evolution. And Neighborhood Evolution, we travel around the country with my partners, Bernice Radel from Buffalo, New York, Jim Kuhlman from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Mike Keene from South Bend, Indiana, and Jenny Gonzalez from Asheville, North Carolina. And what we do is we help cities create ecosystems for small scale developers. So we coach and teach and have classes and consult with cities. We also consult with these cities on special projects they have. We don't work in those cities because we work in our part of our philosophy is you work in your own local farm, but we take those lessons learned from our local lab, I call it, and then share them around the country.
Yeah, share with me. I think you've been a proponent and a pioneer in small scale development way before it was trendy. So, define for us and for the audience what that means and how it's different than any other traditional development.
Yeah, for where I came from was doing small scale incremental development in towns in the have not side of the cities, right? In the cities that are in areas of red line where I actually grew up. And so out of pure desperation, we figured that we could do one small building at a time and fix one neighborhood at a time, one block at a time, one building. And so before you know it, you have 20 buildings, 50 buildings, whatever it is that in your community you have all these buildings restored. And you could do that, that can be done on a local level. It can really be done by the locals. The big developers, private equity developers, big REITs, others are not going to work on those small infill, development. So this would be like your infill lots, redoing an old gas station into a snow cone stand or a restaurant or taking an old warehouse and turn it into a collaboration village or, an old strip center, a suburban strip center and doing some odd things with it, maybe putting some residential on the parking lots or those kind of different things. And these are the kind of projects that generally speaking are not going to be done by the bigger companies. And so therefore it's the locals that do this kind of work, people that actually care about their communities. And what we like to say, we like to call these town makers. And so a town maker is somebody that needs to make money. I mean, number one goal is to make money, but doing good is equal. And so that's the difference between us and regular real estate development. We're still capitalist real estate developers, don't get me wrong, because we have to be, we have to make money. But that's not the only end game
Yeah.
is just the money.
I'm fairly certain that previously you shared community wealth, and I feel like that work is very much defined in that.
Yeah, community, building network for community. I mean, the most important thing in any real estate development is the occupants of that real estate make money. If they don't make money, then, nothing happens. And especially in areas that are lower middle income or middle income, building net worth is a really important thing. So for locals to own buildings and building that net worth is really important for communities to have, good stability. And in fact, I would say this, affordable housing is not our problem today. It's a symptom of the problem. The problem we have is we don't make enough money. And so I'm kind of known for helping, entrepreneurs get a foothold, and try to, making them, getting them to own, especially restaurants. You're deep into that business, but like owning your own building. So you build your brand, not in some landlord's building. And I rent to plenty of restaurants and I like to do that. But I also tell people, you're building a brand in somebody else's building and, comes for renewal on the lease. The better you do, the more rent you're going to have to pay,
Sure.
right? And, percentage rents, things like that. But, yeah, I think that's really important that we go back to a time in this country. I mean, all over the locals get And this is what I call that gentrification is when the locals get booted out, when an area gets popular, it gets, gentrification is when the locals get the ownership. Gentrification is when they get the wealth.
Have you trademarked that? I like that a lot. Gentlification.
And I probably stole it from somebody else anyway. I don't know. You never know. But I think I heard it somewhere, but I may have made it up. I may have heard it either way. I'm not sure.
Can you share with us, have you had a tenant yet be incubated in a fashion where you're teaching them and they ultimately bought your building out so that you were able to pay it forward to the next tenant?
Yeah, I mean, that's happened many times. I've got one restaurant that I've got right now that just bought a building here I'm in southern Dallas County. So that's like in Dallas, for those that don't know, that's like Oak Cliff, Duncanville, DeSoto, Cedar Hill, Lancaster, those cities. And so there's a really good restaurant in Oak Cliff and a kind of a cool place that's gotten really gentrified. And they were renting. And for many years, I said, look, come to Duncanville and come to our main street. And they said, well, we're not really interested in coming to Duncanville. I said, well, wait a minute. What if you could own a building here? And they said, wait a minute, that's a different story. So you might get a better quality deal, like somebody that you wouldn't normally get if you're renting. If you're in an area that's up and coming or not that dynamic yet, you might get somebody to move in and take a chance. And, if they can own something. And so our goal down here was to help them we got the city to give them a little bit of grant. They got a little bit of financing from a bank. They got some CDFI, which is a nonprofit bank, did some financing, and then they got some investor loan money. And we're building a brand new restaurant right now out of an old building on Main Street. I also known a couple of barbers that started out, as basically young barbers. Now started off in small spaces, and now they own 3 barber shops, 2 barber schools, a couple of pieces of commercial real estate, mixed use that they're occupants of. And I mean, it goes on and on. I got a photographer who started off renting in a warehouse, and now he owns a work live building where it had an old house that we added a barn looking thing to it in an urban setting. Now he owns that, and these kind of people can get SBA loans, and they can get low down payments and 30-year loans, and maybe cheap. It's probably cheaper than them renting from a landlord. So it's a
Monty,
really
I'm
good.
curious, either one of your parents or any family members in real estate, how did you fall into this industry?
No, my dad, I guess he was in real estate. He was a carpenter. So my dad built houses. And then later on, he started sheetrocking malls back in the 70s and during that period when malls were being built. And so in my early days, right out of high school, I didn't go to college. I was a motocross racer. And after that career was over, that's an early person, early man's career. But after that, my dad said, well, you can come to work for me, but you have to hang sheetrock or haul sheetrock up and down the road. After hauling sheetrock around a little bit, quickly I decided I don't want to be the sheetrocker. Who owns this bill? I want to
Right.
hire the sheetrocker. How do we
Yes.
do that? He said, I don't know. The rich get richer and it's not us, and so I began on a journey out of, just pure desperation of saying, okay, well, what can I own? How can I start small, buy something small, buy a house, buy a small building, fix it up, rent it out. I'll use part of it. It always made sense for me to use part of it and rent some of it out. And in the early days, we were doing co-working, as part of our buildings. Like already, it's like, hey, we've got some space. Hey, we got some extra space. Here's some desks. Come over here and sit down with us. And my mom was a telephone operator for, called Zero. She would answer the phone, plug
Yes.
in the switchboard, and so both of them just passed away in the last couple of years. But they did teach qualities like never giving up, but they didn't know anything about this business. I had to learn it. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so interested in teaching it around the country, that there's so many people that I know that don't even know that actual people like us, like regular people, can actually own a building. I meet
Yes.
young kids all the time and they think the city owns these buildings. They don't know. I met some girls the other day, some 8th graders, and that's what they thought. They thought the city owned these buildings. And so that's one of the reasons that we think this is so important, paying it forward. And a strong middle class, a strong middle class makes a really healthy, community and an owner occupied, just like an owner occupied neighborhood, right? It really makes people with more pride and they're more interested in planting trees for the long term or whatever the case may be. But there was no one to mentor and during that time mentor me. I got it out of books like Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill or something, and that opened my mind up to thinking about possibilities that are more than what I had grown up with.
Yeah. So you had an innate curiosity and that led you to learn and teach yourself. I love that.
Yeah, that's right. And pure desperation, I think it works good. I mean, being in a community all your life, things. I mean, I rode my bicycle in the creeks, I knew where you could get an ice cream, which neighborhoods were good and which neighborhoods were bad. And you knew things. And, and that kind of deep cultural knowledge, it's real easy to start to say, well, what are we missing here? I don't have a place we don't have a good barber shop, or we don't have an art studio here, or a coffee shop. We don't have a coffee shop on our little main street, and Starbucks was not coming. So what we did was we got the donut shop to serve better coffee. And so we kind of did the best of what we had. And I learning this small developer thing and this incremental, it's like you kind of take what you got, and if it's not perfect, we can make it better. Like the donut shop having a better brand of coffee made a better donut shop. And then they started doing better donuts. And then the next thing you know, there's a bagel shop comes in, and then because these are proof of concepts, these things always help spur on, other things.
Absolutely. I love it. I call it the ripple effect or the domino
Yeah, it's a
effect, right?
ripple.
You
Yeah,
just see one drop in the ocean and then hopefully it permeates beyond.
in neighborhood evolution, we call it the flywheel effect. So it's the same thing. So the faster it goes, the better. Yeah, sometimes if you just start small, and that's really a lot of us, men especially, we don't want to start small. We want to start big, and
Of course. That pride.
we don't want to read the instructions. We just want to, we just want to
Just
build it,
go.
that pride thing. And so we quite often, it's hard for us to start small and be satisfied. One of the reasons that a lot of the people that we train, it seems like we have better women developers than we do men, because the women will generally follow instructions for one thing. Secondly, we're talking about nurturing neighborhood. They're made to nurture, and us men are quite often are made to, we're like conquer. Women nurture, men conquer. It really works good. A nurturer is better for incremental development or smaller development growing up. That doesn't mean you got to stay small, by the way.
Right.
I mean, you could take a big project and, you could take a great big project and do it in phases, and not always have to go borrow big sums of money, especially when you're young and getting started. Can't tell you how many times I've done that. Go back to the bank on a project and refinance 4, 5, 6 times as the project evolves, as I get more tenants. Yep.
Well, it's good that they know you and have that long-standing relationship. I'm sure that there's a couple that you continue to work with because they've seen your success over and over.
Yeah. And some banks get, sometimes banks get deal fatigue. It's like, don't come back here again. You have to go to another bank. They get deal fatigue. They kind of fit that. You got to fit in those boxes. And
Sure.
then a new bank's seeing it. I've already got it half leased, and, they see it better. And
Would
can
you
take
say that financing is the hardest part of it? What would you say, like in terms of all the pieces that you have to be involved with on a daily basis? What are the tough ones?
Finance is always hard for sure. But I think the hardest part about a small developer, an incremental developer, different from a big developer. A big developer, you got a CEO up here, and you got vice presidents, and then you got managers and supervisors, and you got consultants and lobbyists and all the architects and engineers. You got all these people you need. Quite often as a small scale developer, incremental developer, you're in the middle of the flywheel. I mean, you're having to touch everything. So you might have I mean, I'm over here collecting rent one day. I'm also over here signing a note for, millions of dollars on a deal at the same time. I might also be leasing space. I'm also dealing with a property management issue. And you're in the center of everything. You're not at the top. You're at the center, and you really have to have that ecosystem built around you. You wrote a book called The 12 Steps of Town Making. And in that book, the first step is to adopt your farm, your place that you're going to work. But the second step is getting to know your neighbors, and your neighbors are your plumbers and your painters and your building inspectors and your city council people and, your architects and your tenants. I like to say always, if you have a tenant, you put it in your hip pocket. That's money in your pocket. If you have a tenant, you have a bankable, you have a bankable project. But what you're doing is surrounding yourself. And so the hardest thing is to be able to do that. To really, like, I was a real estate agent
Yes.
first. I was a real estate agent starting out, similar to you. I mean, that's and you do the same. But and that real estate agent is one part of the thing you do. And so that I
Absolutely.
kept doing. I kept doing that for other people. I kept renting, leasing space, selling buildings for other people at the same time. And then eventually I started just basically doing it for myself. But then I had property managers that would come on and then doing construction. I didn't want to do construction and I didn't want to do property management.
Well, because you already did construction, right? You already tried your hand at sheetrocking. You said, this is not for me.
I mean, you know this. Property management is hard.
Yes.
We make a lot of money as brokers. We make, it's easy money. Management, you make money the hard way. I didn't want to do management, didn't want to do construction. And as a small scale developer, out of, out of pure necessity, I had to do my own. I found out that I could hire a carpenter who knew how to schedule and order materials, could be my person on the site. Then
Yeah.
if I had a bookkeeper and a maintenance person, I had a management, and none of them had to be full time, but I had to have key people around me, but they had to be able to come and go where I didn't have to pay them lots of
A
part-timers and
salary.
things
Yes.
like that, or part-time with me. They're working with somebody else, but a lot of property managers, like stay-at-home mom or dad who's doing, side hustle here, doing a little bit of the property management or bookkeeping for you, or a maintenance person who's working at the plant down the street, but also does, repairs too and some things. So, then those kind of people became full-time as time went on. But the hardest part is that really being in the middle of the storm all the time. You're in the middle. And today has been one of those days too. It's been like, oh man, I had too many tenants tell, you told me this. No, I didn't tell you that. Here's what the lease says. It's like,
Yeah.
the lease says this. We didn't say we were going to paint the ceiling. You want the ceiling painted, but we said we clean it, but we talked about painting it. Well, we may have talked about painting it, but we didn't put it in the lease. So
Correct. Yes.
those kind of days are not as much fun. This is still work, right? I mean, it's
Sure.
still development may look sexy and stuff, but it's really this kind of community development, small scale incremental development it really is hard work.
Yeah.
You really got to be a really good generalist.
And you're a conductor, right? You have all these different musicians playing music all over the place, and you have to wrangle them all to kick out some beautiful work.
And when you're kind of ADD or, like, I'm like that old drunk cowboy who gets up from the bar and rides off in all directions. I'm like, yeah, I'm here, doing this. I mean, I was an agent who did like hundreds of deals a year. So, I mean, I was like a, obsessed, real estate agent, and I'm
Sure.
similar now with my development.
So what are the key pieces that you look for? Because I think part of what our audience might be looking to know is like, how do you plan? Are you a long-term hold? Do you hold for a certain number of years? How do you attack, specifically the market that you're in to make the impact that you want?
I don't get too connected to anything these days. All my projects are very personal and very special. I hope to be able to leave them in the hands of somebody decent. I love to be able to sell a shopping center or something to a tenant who's an owner occupant that's what I'd really love to do. And I have one of my projects called Tyler Station, and I have several of my tenants there are now partners in the partnership. They're renters and they're partners. And I love that eventually one day I'll just be gone. And I don't like selling things to out of town investors and things as much, although I have when I've, had to sometimes when I needed money to move to the next project. But I've held the kind of work I do generally, we have to hold stuff for generally 7 or 10 years. I've got properties I've held for 20 years now. They're 7 to 10 years be, more average. Recently, I've been able to buy some things that I really didn't want to keep, but I've fixed them up, prepared to keep them if I need to, and then to sell them. If they became marketable and valuable, I could sell them and generate cash to do 1031 tax deferred exchanges. That's where, you can defer your taxes, you take your profits and put it into the next. And those deals created, because I'm I have partners in these deals, so I charge myself, brokerage fees and
Of
development
course.
fees and management fees. So I can make fees along the way, and that's how my company survives, is off those fees. And I have to be really careful with that because make sure that it's not just all about me. My partners and stuff are important too. And I have partners that have been with me for 25, 20 and 25 years.
That's very telling, Monty.
So they,
That's a good sign.
yeah, we've never had knock on wood, we never had a bankruptcy or a foreclosure. It's been close a few times, I thought, but back in the 2008 days or, 9/11 days. But I think, it just depends. You ask the question, I'm a long-term or short-term holder. If we have to make money, again, not growing up with wealth, we have to make money, have to store, how cash is king. We need cash to do, especially if you do the kind of experimental type, projects that I do, like they're odd. It's retail incubators. I am a roommate house, our collaboration village. I got a homeless housing intake center in one of my strip centers, things like that. But, they're all kind of odd things. And so you can't bank on a lot of those. So you have to put extra cash up to do those projects. So it really all depends on the timing and what I need. I would love to just, I mean, if I just had, everything, I'd love to just keep it all and keep managing it and running it. But I do try to trade up. I started off buying houses,
Right.
fixing them up. I would live in them. If I was starting out today, I would buy a 3-bedroom house somewhere. I'd move into one of the rooms and I'd hack off a couple of rooms where they had their own entries. They didn't have to share a kitchen with me or anything. And I'd rent them out. And that's what I do. I'd get an FHA loan or, a residential mortgage. And that's what I would do. I mean, get a
But
low
haven't
down
you
payment.
already done that, Monty? I'm sure
I
I
mean,
saw a video recently of like the roommate house where kind of circumnavigated, I guess, local code, or you play by the rules and everybody has their own space, but there are doors within, correct?
well, that was an experiment,
Yeah.
very experimental. But if I was starting again today,
Okay.
that's what I would do. I
Sure.
would buy I wouldn't do as extensive as we did there. Yeah, but the roommate house is a single family zoned neighborhood where it had these magic doors, these secret doors. If you look and Google my name in the New York Times, you'll see the article about it. But these magical doors behind a closet, you could open up and make code. And as long as you didn't have a stove in each of the units, at 5
Sure.
units in like a 3,500 square foot property. And they're all got air fryers and they all have their own restrooms. They all have like air fryers and microwaves, like a high powered wet bar. Only one unit has the full kitchen.
What is something like that rent for in terms of those units?
So the ones that we're doing here will rent for like $1,500 a month. They're all bills paid, internet, and furnished. And so we do a lot of those that we'll do anything from a 2-month to a 1-year lease. We have a lot of traveling nurses that for a job, short term. It's got a pool. It's a 1970s suburban sprawl house,
Love it.
so it had, built for mom and dad and 2.6 kids in
Right.
1970. And kids grew up and went away. Dad died. Mom's in the house by herself, deteriorating in a big house. And mom could have retrofitted along the way and had some roommates. Mom is more likely to have social company, or
Absolutely.
if she's sick, somebody or a family member can move in with you, but not live with you. If you've got a parent that's maybe early stages of dementia, or you can put them next door to you, but they're not in your same unit.
Right.
These are very, in it. The one that I've got here, I've been there a year, this one, and it's fascinating. It's been so good because there's no way I could live in this suburban neighborhood, because I want to live in a more urban place, but this is an
Yes.
experiment for me. And if I lived out there by myself, I would lose my mind. But I see
Yes.
'em people are coming and going,
Yeah.
all the time. I live with
Good
4
energy.
females. I live with
Yes.
4, it's all females. One of them's my granddaughter, but they come and go. And so there's people around the pool, and it's a little bit Airbnb-ish looking, feeling where you get to know people. They're not there for a very long term. It's a lot of it's okay for me living.
It's like
I can
your version of Forrest Gump's house, right? Where it was like a bed and breakfast and Elvis came through and it's nice variety.
just it's old school. We didn't invent anything really.
Right.
We just kind of perfected it, and it's a good. There's lots of these days, if above 60, I may not have the statistics quite right, but above 60 years old, women, the two black women outnumber like in 2 to 1. So there's a lot of women that are living to be close to 100 that are living by themselves. And in this case, you can sure live longer there than living in and moving to some kind of a home or assisted living or that.
And
It's a
they're
little more,
so expensive, Monty.
that
I mean,
makes,
1,500 a month sounds very attractive.
it's very inexpensive. You got housekeeping twice a month, furnished. So I like the housekeeping because then I keep up with people that are taking care of the units. I make sure
Of course.
they're doing that. You got separate air conditioning control in each one. And you got enough parking, off street parking. You got to have that so you don't get all your neighbors mad, because
We've been doing some work in the master plan community space, and I am very happy to see that they're designing a variety of different products as well as price points, so you can move up or down within the neighborhood. That maybe you come in there as a young couple, you have no kids, you do have kids, but then you age up, your kids move out, but you don't want to move out of the neighborhood because you know those people, you have your dentist, you know your local coffee shop, and so I appreciate that there's a little bit more of a diversity in the product types in these bigger developments that are coming online. But I'm like you, I want to be in an urban fabric and environment where I could walk to as much as possible.
and just being around people, but not living. I don't think we share good together. I think two people living
Fair.
together, whether you're a couple or, whether you're related, somebody's clean, somebody's not, or
Sure.
you'll drive the other one crazy. Somebody drinks your milk, it doesn't ask, those, but in this case, they're there, but they're not.
So they have their own space.
You have to go outside because we cut doors into the outside of the building. So you have to go outside and knock on the door to come in to visit. You mean the inspector comes out, we open the doors up, and here's, we're all connected together. We're roommates, and you legally, by code, you can have up to 4 roommates in this city that we did this in. Even so, it's completely legal. And more cities are getting where they're letting you have our duplex and fourplexes, right? We're seeing more.
Correct. I appreciate that. We need that densification. So what advice do you give to kind of city leaders or downtown development authorities, you know, in order to be open to the Monty style of development?
What do I tell them? What do I tell those cities? Yeah, uh, excuse me. I would say spend less time on detailed, comprehensive plans. I said do more conceptual planning, get some pictures of things that are good and things that are not. We like these, we don't like these. And then start working in your opportunity areas. What you would say? I would say the same to a real estate developer too. What is your opportunity area? Your opportunity area is where can we find a project, a building, a piece of land, or whatever the case may be, that we can acquire and then we can get financing for. That's the opportunity. Something that's priced right, that we can get a hold of it and redo it or build. That's the opportunity. And once you have the opportunity, then you figure out what the market will accept. For instance, and you're in the rest, you're probably the best restaurants of anywhere around. But you think about this, like in Duncanville, Texas here, if you put in, a 4,000 square foot barbecue joint here right now, there's very few people that could make it there that are not national franchises.
Yeah. Barb's from Lockhart. It's delicious.
So, but
Yep.
if I put in, I'm building one right now, a 700 square foot barbecue restaurant.
Yes.
Okay. A guy who's one guy who's, a restaurateur, legally blind guy coming in, but he's small. He can move around. It's got a few seats and to go. And he's probably going to do pretty good because he'll make himself a good living. He can work there and work hard and make himself a good living. But let's say he can't make it. He can't make it. I can use that 700 square foot restaurant all day long to other people that want to try it.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
that's a good size, Monty. I mean, I've seen spaces try to operate in 250, and that's tight. 700 gives you place for storage to navigate.
its own room. And in that case, at my DeSoto Marketplace, which is really a retail incubator, and it's made a lot of national attention, and in fact, it's on the front website of the CNU, Congress for the New Urbanism website. It's on the front, or it was, but I've got 7 400 square foot restaurants out there, and 3 trailers in the parking lot, 3 inline, it's a suburban strip center, retrofitted strip center, 3 inline So you got a pizza and a Chinese joint and a donut shop, in line, typical we would see anywhere. And then in the parking lot, you got a snow cone trailer, a barbecue trailer, and a Cajun food trailer. And then inside, they're out in the parking lot in their trailers. And that gives you life in this old shopping center and twinkly lights, twinkly lights to make it look better. And then
Yeah.
inside, you've got 7 restaurants that go across the front of the building, all with exterior windows, to serve out the front, all sharing a grease trap.
Yes.
They all share an ice machine. They share common areas, which I'm not really crazy about the common area food court kind of sharing the space, but it's worked out okay. And they've got everything over there from a juice bar to tacos to, cake, baker, African food, Thai food, things like that. And so they all do good. And it's interesting is all these little restaurants during COVID, they all made it during COVID. In
Well, because
fact,
they didn't have large overhead. That's very important.
and they thrived, in fact, because people got real tired of eating at home real fast. The restaurants were closed, and so they were buying, to-go food from these places that could serve out the front window, and so it was really interesting. So yeah, I can admit, I have 500 tenants, but probably 30 or 35 or 40 are restaurants, and a lot of them are these little bitty tiny restaurants. They're fun and they're good, and they're also hard. Some people don't make very much money. It makes me sad. They just struggle, and so we those that struggle, I do a lot of counseling. Just simple. What's the pro forma? Give me what's your income? What's your expenses? What's your, what do you got to do? How many more tacos do you got to sell a day to make it work? Kind of simple stuff. We talk about those things. Become legendary. We say become legendary. Like don't have too big a menu.
Right.
Keep a
Keep it
small
short and
menu.
simple, like in and out. And that's perfect for our last question, Monty, is like when you think about legacy, what are you hoping people will say about you in the neighborhood that you shape? I feel like having that kind of consulting mindset and educating them and helping them be successful, I think is
Yeah.
immensely helpful.
Yeah, I think I've helped finance and fund a lot of these entrepreneurs with like their finish out and their equipment.
Sure.
But this is not just because I'm a good guy. I'm doing this because when I finish out, for instance, a little restaurant space and I put all the equipment in, and I've just done that on 2 little restaurants. It cost a lot. It was really expensive, but I was able to finance those out 20 years with my building.
Right.
If they would have rented the space and done the finish out and bought the equipment, it's 5 years.
Yes.
5 years. So their rent would have been way up here. Well, I'm still getting $60 a square foot rent in Duncanville, Texas, believe it or not. Unbelievable. But it's
And
only
I think
700 square feet.
there you go. You look at
They
the
get
square
all of that.
footage. Yes.
So, and it's cheaper than they would have spent if they had to go borrow the money, and they didn't have to go borrow the money. So they have to come up with enough money. Now I'm looking for somebody with skills. Okay. I'm not just,
Sure.
if they don't have skills to cook that barbecue or the cupcakes or whatever, then, that's a problem. If you don't have any skills, we have a problem.
Yeah. We can't start from nothing.
That's right. We can't
Correct.
start from nothing. I mean, some people think because they cook good at home, I know you've seen this, but they cook good at home that they ought to be in business. And we know that's not the truth. It's one thing to cook for your family. It's another to cook for, 100 people a day. But that's how we've made, and then our net operating income is really high. And so with these 60, that the buildings, really perform good. Now they're harder to manage because I've got
Correct.
more small tenants. It's a lot easier to manage 4,000 square foot tenants as it is to manage, 50 tenants.
Yeah.
So, but it's worth it if you own the building. And as a small scale developer, if I own the building and I'm the property manager, but my
My team.
team.
Yes.
But if then it makes some sense. It
Correct.
makes, and you have to have like a more of an apartment mentality where you're managing an apartment, multiple units, turnover things. You have to have that. It's a commercial property manager, but more of an apartment mentality. We do have some multifamily in our mixed use, but we're more heavy commercial, residential.
Yeah, no, it's much more exciting. I mean, yes, it's great where people live, but to see those businesses thrive and be able to go have a taco or have, something at the Chinese restaurant or a cupcake. I love that part of it because then I get to put money in their pockets as well and see them thrive.
Yeah. And so it is good when it works good, it's great. And when it doesn't, it's really bad. Well,
Understood.
it's not really bad. Not as bad as losing a 5,000 square foot restaurant. And then in these centers, you want to mix, like the one I'm in right now. I'm in a 90,000 square foot shopping center where I'm sitting today that we're retrofitting. I like move in to a lot of my properties. I'll move in and either live there or put my office in. But here we've got the Department of Motor Vehicles. I've got tiny restaurants. I've got WellMed Medical. So I've got Chase Bank. I inherited a Dollar General, was here. There's a T-Mobile here. There's a Domino's Pizza. There's a donut store. There's also a snow cone. There's a couple of boutiques. There's a tattoo art studio. There's a liberal arts training center. There's a daycare, praline candy maker. So there's a mixture of these national credit tenants that get
Yeah.
it's like old time Main Street. See,
I love
if you
that.
remember what Main Street used to only be about 20% retail. The rest of it was the doctor's office and the government center and the attorney's office, and then the hardware store, those. So we treat the retrofit of these old strip shopping centers, and we treat them as like we were building Main Street, and you have that kind of diversity. But the Department of Motor Vehicles and the WellMeds and the Dollar General and the Chase Bank give me my financing. That's their
You
national
got that
credit.
credit coming in. Yep.
And that makes
Yes.
a huge, is it the perfect thing? Idealistically, I would do. It's probably not. If it was, I would just have all hipster cool restaurants and bars and art studios
I
and,
knew I liked
you
you, Monty.
know, sewing, pottery classes and all the fun stuff, realistically in ash places around the country, which we have so many, but it just makes really good sense. And the Department of Motor Vehicles here, for instance, its license plates, they bring in 100 people a day.
Yeah,
So
those people need
my daycares are funny because the daycares are not only is it fun to see little kids here, but they don't take up any parking. They drop their kids off and they don't take up. So leaves me room to take the parking lot out here and put townhomes, on the parking lot for sale,
correct.
sell townhomes. So I'm creating some other owner occupants here, and those become my guards. Or as I sell the shopping center in the future, these townhome owners are going to be the watchers of this shopping center forever. And I made it where the townhomes you couldn't own but one yourself or your entity, so not a developer.
Yeah, no, you're
We're condo.
encouraging owner
By
occupied.
the way, we're condoing those too. By the way, they're on dirt. They're not up here, condo in the air, but they're on dirt. But they're one plat or condo with a condo association. Still the same thing as a platted
Sure.
association, but it makes it where I don't have to quite face the street. Platted lots facing a street. A lot of cities, want to face a public street, and so it would do that. And the bank didn't care as long as they can get good, clear collateral. They can get defined, clear.
Right.
Because it's been the past people that I'm not doing a condo. I'm not loaning money out of a condo except if I'm in Chicago.
Good way to diversify. And you've got residents there that hopefully become regulars in the shopping center and have the convenience of all the shops and services that are there.
And the interesting thing about that is we don't make that much off these townhomes. There's just 12 and started out as 16, but there's going to be 12 townhomes out here. They're not going to make us that money, but I'm estimating that over the next 5 years that this 90,000 square foot shopping center, I could raise the rents like $2 a square foot, per year, which is very modest increase over time, less than 3%. I think it's really, but $2 a square foot on 90,000 square feet is 180,000 a year at an 8 cap rate. That's $2.5 million to the value of the building. So the money may come, you look from, other angles that the money may come in, but a normal development, developer is really, and our lender, or especially a Wall Street type lender's going to see that as that doesn't make any money. You can't do it. So
Yes.
they're not going to look at the whole and what it might do in 5 years because we can't really prove that yet. We will be able to soon, but I can tell you already, because of it, that people are already still close to these old shopping centers built in the 60s and 70s. They were still built in the town, right? They're not out on the freeway.
Correct. Yes.
So they're still kind of surrounded by schools. There's a school across the street. There's residential connected to it. The city hall's right across.
So it's very,
Yeah, so it's
yeah.
not good walkability because it's still Stroads. We have wide roads here, but it's going to get better.
Well, Monty, I so appreciate you sharing your creativity and your passion for helping us see value in incremental development. Whether you're an emerging brand dreaming of your first brick and mortar, or developer looking to unlock hidden value, or city leader planning your next great neighborhood, we're here to help be the pixie dust that makes it all come together. If this conversation sparked something for you, please drop a comment or share this with those that you know would find it valuable, because we believe we all need more we.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Monte Anderson, and you're listening to Hustle and Heart.